Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I use this channel to talk to myself with you in hopes that I learn a little bit more about my experience. And if you learn something about yourself in the process, that's pretty cool with me. Today I want to do something a little different. In the spirit of vulnerability, as my loyal fans know, I don't really write my video scripts for this. I kind of just press record and see what happens. Because I always find writing to be very vulnerable, especially my writing and preparing something like that. And I've been honestly putting off this video because of this very reason of writing something out and getting a lot of anxiety that the script is good or that it's like this good thing for for YouTube to pump out and share and all this stuff. But progress over perfection, and something done is better than the perfect thing not done. So, in the spirit of that vulnerability, this is something I've written that I want to talk about. It's a little bit more esoteric and academic, maybe, peeling back behind the curtain. You will see me be reading from a teleprompter that I have on my computer, so you're going to see some of that. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy. To look at Western media is to look at history. All forms of Western media, and I will specify with American media, all can stem from one place, and that's ancient Greece. Simply put, all forms of entertainment in America can be derived from Greek theater, and specifically comedy and tragedy, or as the Greeks would call it, commedia and tragodia. Yes. Yes. The happy and sad mask that every theater kid brandishes on their bodies and attempts to tattoo on their shoulder has an actual meaning and an actual historical context. But I'm not here or interested in just throwing the history at you. Oh no, contraire derrière. I am actually more interested in this. In the tragedies of our current world, is anything funny anymore? Let's talk about it. I know that I said I wasn't going to talk about history, but I think it's important here for context. So, Greeks would have a festival every year, every March, for Dionysus, the Greek god of winemaking, orchards, fruit, vegetation, fertility, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, ecstasy, the feeling, not the drug, and theater.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
I mean, who wouldn't want to worship a god like that, for real? But this festival was a major celebration. Remember, this predates all forms of collective entertainment, even gladiatorial combat. Oh my God, pause. We're going to step out of this for 1 second. I'm so nervous right now. This is so bizarre. Okay, but I'm going to keep going. Thank you. I love you. You could expect the entire city to show up to a festival like this. Well, only the resident men.
Whack.
And every year, 3 poets would write a long poem to perform, and then the audience, remember, men, would choose their favorite. We can thank the shift from these epic poems to tragic plays largely to Aristotle and their book Poetics. Long story short, he wrote this because he and his teacher, Plato, disagreed about the value of poetry. Aristotle wrote Poetics to show that poetry can be used to describe deep emotional phenomena. The heavy shit, catharsis. Using words to show the action of human beings, especially highborn, in situations with dire consequences, falling from grace to evoke pity and fear from the audience. And that's catharsis. The feeling of recognizing our finiteness in the face of the power of fate. What happens to the great ones of the earth has exemplary significance. To see that this is how it is a kind of self-knowledge for the spectator, who emerges with new insight from the illusions in which they, like everyone else, live. Aristotle wrote 26 lectures about tragedy. And when they were rediscovered in the Renaissance, or the beginnings of the Renaissance, none of the lectures about comedy survived. So, while tragedy and therefore drama continued to evolve in these aesthetics, comedy was kind of left to be of the moment, and I think will always be reflective of the time it is in. And because we are not only living through crisis after crisis, we are also becoming more and more self centric. Yes, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but that doesn't mean it's always necessary to share that opinion. I know that there are certain places where my opinion doesn't matter, and that is okay. And in spite of all this, progress toward inclusion is still happening, where marginalized people are given the respect they deserve through language. Because of all of these things that are happening at the same time, I do often find myself asking, is this funny? Or I'm disoriented by seeing a comedy clip and then immediately after that seeing images of Palestine and Gaza. And then right after that, another funny clip. And I can't unsee what I saw. So then I get this jolt of awareness in my body, this almost out of body experience where here I am looking at this on my phone, and this is happening at the same time somewhere else in the world, and I'm still going to scroll. I will always inevitably scroll past that to something else. There's always going to be that feeling now of, is this funny? Not the tragedies that are happening, but the comedy that I'm watching right now. Is this funny? Like, is humor have a place in this world right now? I think it does, but I'm privileged enough to do that, to have those thoughts, to be removed so much from a lot of this horror that it only exists on my phone. But even that line is creeping up too. I try not to be a pessimist. I do truly believe that the universe is infinitely balanced, and all the bad there is, there's that much good too. I feel like a hack for believing that because of my own comparison to other people's suffering, but I do believe in it. And so, yes, there are things that are going to be funny. Laughter is medicine, and a glimpse of it in hard times can do wonders. And I think it's also important to be aware of the moment that this is happening, that there is tragedy happening in the world. And because there were rules set in place for tragedy, and comedy was always seen as this lesser art form and therefore didn't have the pressure to conform to the rules set by Aristotle. And then once it was sort of rediscovered in the Renaissance, those rules were codified, if you will, into, this is, if you are going to write a play, it has to follow these sets of rules. And because of that, comedy grew in a much more nebulous and reactionary way. Tragedy is meant to hold the mirror to society, and I think comedy is meant to hold a mirror to tragedy. The famous phrase is, comedy is tragedy plus time. So, without getting too much in the weeds about all of comedy's growth in conjunction with other art movements, think like the postmodernism movement, a la an Andy Kaufman kind of comedian, I am going to sum up comedy like this. Yes, tragedy plus time, but also a piece of media that depicts amusing people or incidents in which the characters triumph. A joke is a setup and a punchline. Do we create the world that the humor exists in so that then the humor can be shared? The setup. But this is where things get tricky because something being a comedy and being funny are different. We all know this. We all know this. We've all been subject to someone showing us something they find hilarious, and it's the furthest thing from funny. I think that is what is cool about comedy. It is fully subjective. We all know what a tragedy is, regardless of its quality, good or bad. We all know that tragedy is a tragedy. We can watch a drama and we can understand that it is meant to evoke certain feelings, therefore tragedy. But comedy is truly something that becomes its own ecosystem. in a performance, a film, a TV show, the culture of the comedy becomes specifically inside of that piece of media. Think of the difference between a TV show like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and a sitcom like The Big Bang Theory. Both are comedies, but both can be funny for wildly different reasons, and both have similar sort of conventional sitcom setups. Big Bang Theory follows that more Norman Lear kind of pathway of a your standard run of the mill sitcom, situational comedy, and then Always Sunny is a sitcom technically because it is these characters getting into situations that then create the comedy, but the jokes inside of those things and the jokes inside of those shows are vastly different. As I write this script, I am realizing something that I think I'm asking the wrong question. It isn't a matter of if anything is funny anymore. The real question is, how can we experience catharsis in 2025 so that we can laugh? And that's where I stop with a pre-written script, because I do still like the feeling of this being off the cuff, off the dome. And oh my god, you can throw, oh, can't you can so clearly tell when I'm reading something versus when I'm just talking, because I feel so much more free. Yeah, this so catharsis. I think that of everything that Aristotle was writing about and everything that we have derived from Aristotle, catharsis is such a beautiful thing. We all have experienced catharsis before, I hope. And if you haven't, as painful as it's a good cry. It's the beautiful feeling of knowing your finite existence and being okay with that. Seeing someone in a situation fall so hard that it evokes such strong feelings from us. Succession is a perfect example of eliciting catharsis. You may not necessarily feel bad for the people inside of that experience, but their experiences evoke something inside of you to either question your own experience or reevaluate and re-examine the things inside of yourself that are similar to those characters that you don't like, and then to examine those things that you don't like about yourself. So I think catharsis is a really good thing. And I think catharsis is difficult to experience right now because we are bombarded constantly by real world tragedy. We are exponentially becoming more and more connected because of the internet, more so than any of our ancestors ever were. And so, because of that, we are privy to so much more of the global struggles and the global tragedy and the global suffering. I think audiences in ancient Greece were unaware of the struggles of the Celtic people on the British Isles or the native peoples here in America. I obviously, but now I know of the horrors that are happening to people all over the world because of my access and because of the news. And so I think because of that, it is a beautiful thing because I am more plugged into the real suffering of the world. But it makes it harder to experience catharsis because it's, well, what's the point of watching something like this when there's so much more tragedy in the real world? And then at the same token with comedy, it's what's the point of watching something like this? Or it feels wrong to laugh right now when there's so much pain in the world. But Ram Dass sort of talks about learning to hold space for all of it, learning to hold space in the horrors of the children in Gaza and the exuberance of the children being born, and trying to have the balance in holding space for both. Yes, absolutely. Never feel guilty for watching the comedy. The Ram Dass quote, he was talking about throwing a frisbee, and the quote from Gandhi, the inscription on Gandhi's tomb that is, think of the poorest person you've ever seen and ask whether your next act will be of any use. And Ram Dass says, the question is, do you throw the frisbee or don't you? And that's the whole discourse right there. And what does it mean to be an American, and what does it mean to be affluent in a world of suffering? And what is our dharma? That involves the poorest person we've ever seen without looking away. And it also involves the frisbee and the balance of that frisbee, where to not throw the frisbee in that moment is to not do anything for the child or the poorest person that you can think of. And so is this balance, right? And even in comedy and tragedy, we can look at that where they always look in tandem. And even in these Dionysian, they're called the Festival of Dionysia, they would have these three poems, and then at the end they would do satyr plays, which were satire, and then eventually over time they started to include comedies. So we've always been seeking this balance between the tragedies of the world around us and how do we laugh at those, or how do we then find and capture the joy of comedy. And it's hard. There's no long a long-winded a long-winded way to say this is that there is no right answer. I think the things are don't be an ass and to be respectful inside of humor, because in terms of like humor and in terms of creating that comedy, there's always the setup and the punchline for those jokes, right? And a lot of times the difficulty of comedy is when the setup involves an us and them mentality, right? It is to create the setup of this is a community, and then therefore the punchline is something that is different, because comedy is subverting that expectation. We expect one thing and then something else happens, and the shock of that will elicit laughter. And so that's why a lot of people, when they see horrifying things or when confronted with horrific things, a natural impulse is to laugh at those because of that shock. It is because of that shifted expectation. And so it can be really difficult when people who use comedy as a way to ostracize or a way to bully someone and then claim that it's all just a joke, they're just not funny. Or like I just don't find those kind of humor that kind of humor funny anymore. Yes, it's a quick and easy joke that gets a quick and easy laugh. So if you're someone who likes to make people laugh, that is a bit of that devil's candy or the fast food of jokes, because you can make a joke about something that is setting up that dichotomy and the difference between one thing and the other. But if it comes at the cost of saying something hurtful and saying something harmful to someone else, what's the point? Not in this world anymore, I don't think. But that's just me. And I'm happy to continue to have the discourse about this. I'm also happy to just put this out there to tie it all together with the topic of the video, too. Sometimes people make bad jokes, and sometimes it's subconscious, unintentional, and uneducated. And when we can learn the new information about language or saying something that is hurtful, and there is that growth and that change, I do want to celebrate the people who do that. And for those who cry sensitivity politics, it's supposed to be funny. It's just a joke. You're supposed to laugh at a joke. If you're telling someone to laugh at a joke, maybe it's not a funny joke. And there are obviously things that we should never joke about. I think that's all I've got. Well, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let's get the discourse going. What do you think is something that a lot of people find funny that you don't find funny? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks again. I love you. Bye.